When times feel uncertain, we often look for big solutions, whether that is new technologies or sweeping reforms. But growing up, I was taught something different. When I first started learning to play piano, I was immediately drawn by composers such as Beethoven or Mozart. But I didn't know how to play yet, so my parents stopped me and told me to start with my scales. The lesson is simple. You don't start solving big problems by skipping the basics. So today, when we talk about shaping moments of today into a better future, I would like to invite you all to look smaller as well. Small enough, in fact, to fit on the wing of a bee. Bees came into my life in my junior year of high school. After AP exams, my biology teacher had us start building beehives. This project quickly became one of my favorite things on campus, and I still remember the first time I opened up the hive. I was all decked out in my XXL beekeeping suit, which was just a bit too large for me, and holding up the frame that was dripping with honey and bees. I was struck because I expected chaos, but what I saw instead was a strange coordination. And through my months of working with the hives beside Lake Jonah, I slowly began to discover a new way of how life sustains itself. Bees have been on this planet for over 100 million years. Us humans, not as long, only 300,000. Bees have lived through ice ages, droughts, huge environmental changes, and yet they've survived. Not because they were bigger than us or stronger, but because of how they lived. A hive isn't guided strictly by force or hierarchy alone. Instead, it is guided by the relationship, the connection, and the balance within the hive. Each bee will respond to local information, whether that is temperature, food availability, or the pheromones or chemical signals that are emitted by its fellow worker bees. Not a single bee understands the entire system, and yet it works. So, for example, when the hive begins to overheat, some bees will start fanning their wings to push air through the hive, while others will bring back water droplets to cool the hive through evaporative cooling. All these actions seem small, but together they can sustain the entire structure. And so the hive is resilient simply because each bee has the ability to respond to what is needed. So now, let's zoom out a tiny bit. Think of the world we're living in today. Climate change, environmental degradation, food systems that are under strain. These are all prevalent issues we've been hearing about on the news and from other various sources. And one of the clearest warning signs is the decline of bees. Bees are responsible for roughly a third of the food that we eat today. How many of you have eaten a fruit or a vegetable today? I know I just had some very lovely green beans. And yet, without bees and pollinators like them, foods such as fruits, vegetables, and nuts become increasingly harder to grow, less diverse, and more expensive. But still, more than 40% of insect pollinator species are now at risk of extinction due to issues such as habitat loss and monoculture farming and pesticide use. In the US alone, beekeepers have reported losing over half of their honeybee colonies in a single year. And when bees disappear, it is not just honey that we lose. It is also ecosystem stability and food security. Bees are not a side character in our environmental story. They are a signal that something larger is out of balance. So now let's talk about honey. Honey to us seems optional to us, something sweet you can put on top of your pancakes in the morning. But for a hive, honey is what makes survival possible. It is energy that is stored during times of abundance for times of scarcity. And here's the thing, bees take what is enough. They don't strip every flower bare, and they don't consume each drop as soon as they make it. Industrial systems today tend to extract as much, make as much, as fast as possible and as much as possible, whether that is from the people, from the land, and labor. And the same thing applies to how we live as well. In this growth, in this productivity, and success at any cost. Nearly 2,000 years ago, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius once said, "What is not good for the hive is not good for the bee." When we damage the systems that are sustaining us today, we will eventually damage the systems that will eventually damage ourselves as well. A bee cannot survive without its hive, and the hive cannot survive by pushing itself beyond its limits, and neither can we. So, if a bee is a signal for us, what are they telling us? And what can we do? Well, first of all, pay attention to early signals. Bees are environmental first responders, and when they disappear, it is feedback. Now the question is, are you listening? Second, protect what regenerates. The largest irrigated crop in the US today is turf grass, something we can't even consume. We're spending large amounts of water on turf grass while pollinators are losing their habitats. So protecting what regenerates can be something that's as simple as letting parts of our lawns grow wild or planting native plants. It could also mean supporting farming practices that reduce pesticide use, as well as supporting foods that are grown with pollinators in mind. And finally, rethink the myth of doing it alone. The bee is only a small creature, and yet through their and all their thousands of fellow bees, they sustain the entire hive. And likewise, for our future, it will depend less on a single breakthrough and more so on many aligned choices over time. So when we think about the blueprint for tomorrow, for ourselves, for the planet, and other people, we don't start with grand concertos. Instead, we will start with scales. Because the path forward might not be something entirely new. In fact, it might be something that's often overlooked, something that is quietly buzzing all around us. Thank you.